This allows us to confirm.
I understand completely.
Security walked Maya to the service elevator while her fingers dug into the edges of a small cardboard box of her things. Shame prickled behind her ears as coworkers looked away. Jonas kept his voice flat and precise. "Maya, this is standard procedure, Jonas," and the words sounded like a clause being stamped shut. The elevator doors closed on the floor to ceiling windows. The city reflected in glass and metal. Within the first 5 minutes, the conflict was clear. She had lost her job, and the building would not let her linger. Maya rested the box on her thigh and blinked until the edges of her vision steadied. She pressed the strap of her worn leather tote across her shoulder out of habit. Her hands kept wanting to straighten papers that no longer belonged to her. Shame shaped her posture. The sensation pushed her toward the lobby doors as if the street might swallow the moment whole. She stepped outside onto the stone plaza with the box under her arm and the late afternoon sun laying thin light across her coat. The plaza emptied its people away from the wide glass doors. Someone brushed past with a coffee and did not look back. Claire had said nothing beyond an awkward nod in the corridor. Claire's face had been pinched and quick. Maya set the box down by the marble planter and sat on the steps, because standing felt like admitting the day was real. Her breath came shorter than she expected. She held the box to her chest and listened to the city noise, footsteps, a distant siren, the scrape of a delivery truck. The central problem, plain and concrete, had already happened. The company cut her job and left her with nothing but a box and a hollowed-out schedule. She opened the box to check the items. A thin silver watch, a bundle of pens, a framed photo of a campus lecture hall with sticky notes in the corner. She ran a thumb along the edge of a paperclip. Then she looked up and realized someone was standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching without hurry. He wore a tailored coat and looked like he belonged in the building lobby rather than on the plaza. Neat hair, a soft dimple when he smiled. He did not move fast enough to be a predator, or slow enough to be a bystander. Maya tightened her grip on the box. "You okay?" the man asked, and his voice was low. Maya felt suspicion first, a prick of alertness under the shame. She swallowed and managed, "I lost my job." Saying it aloud made the sentence heavier. The man looked at her box, at the photo, at the watch. He did not ask about her role. He only said, "I'm Ethan Reed." He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and drew out a card, but did not slide it across yet. Maya pulled the strap of her tote tighter. She wanted to stand, to walk away, to do anything that avoided conversation. But the plaza wind picked up and dusted the edges of a leaflet across Jonah's shoe. She let a single breath out and accepted the stranger's invitation without planning to accept his help. Inside, her feelings shifted. Shame loosened into a raw, vocal anger that made her stare at him. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Why help me?" Ethan sat on the step beside her after a small pause. He folded his hands and leaned forward, enough so his voice carried but not so much that it crowded her. "I saw them bring you out," he said. "I used to work on the floors below. I know the building's rhythm. You looked like you needed a warm place to think." His words felt precise and careful. Maya noticed the signet ring on his finger and the way his watch sat against his wrist. She noticed the absence of any placard or hurry. Her suspicion nudged toward curiosity. They walked 2 blocks to a cafe that held the winterlight like glass. The owner, Anna, knew regulars and glanced up when they entered. She washed a mug and nodded once, a private recognition that did not ask questions. "Ethan, for 2 coffees and an extra chair." He pushed the cardboard box to Maya's side and said, "Leave it here. You can breathe for 10 minutes." She did not say no. Inside the cafe, the heated lamps smelled of oil and citrus peel. The world outside felt thinner. Ethan watched Maya more than he spoke. When he did speak, he drew out a small business card and placed it on the table without making the motion look like an offer. I invest in teams, he said. I help people find the next step. He folded his hands again. Maya read his name and a title beneath it, but the card's words felt distant compared to the heat of the mug between her palms. She kept saying, "No, I done to need that," but her voice hampered itself. Shame slid into doubt. Doubt then shifted into a brittle kind of hope that she pushed away with a laugh. Anna came by with a cloth and set the mug down. "You two all right?" "Anna." She looked at Maya with an expression that held both curiosity and a small, professional concern. "She lost her job today, Ethan." And the sentence changed Anna's manner into attentive. "If you want a quiet table, use the back corner, Anna," Ethan added. Maya felt the corner as an island. The calf light pooled like honey. She tucked her hair behind her ear and stared at the watch in the box. Maya's phone buzzed on the table. She lifted it and saw a message from an unknown number quoting a detail one usually keeps private. The name of the lecture series, where she'd spoken earlier that year. The message read, "Talk to Ethan Reed. You were good at the panel on community outreach." The name matched the man across from her. Her heart rate jumped. Suspicion hardened into unease. She showed the message to Ethan. Ethan's face kept calm. He explained in a measured tone that he had read a paper she co-authored and had followed her work. He had seen her speak and that he kept an eye on people whose work he respected. Maya felt a shift again, from unease to a prickly sense of violation. She wanted to stand, to demand how much he had watched. "How much did you watch?" she asked, and her voice had a clipped edge. Ethan's hands folded and he answered, "Enough to know talent when I see it." The sentence sounded rehearsed. Maya pushed back by pulling one corner of the framed lecture photo out of the box. A sticky note fell free and fluttered onto the tabletop. It bore an inside joke from Claire. Claire's name was a small proof of ordinary life. Maya tapped the note and said, "I done like being watched without knowing it." She set the note down. Ethan's calm did not break. He touched the card again, then slid it toward her with his fingertip. They left the cafe at dusk. The office-lighted windows had turned into rectangles of pale gold. Maya needed one item from her empty floor, a locket she always kept in the tote. Ethan offered to walk with her. Claire met them at the lobby with her collar turned up and a carrier bag. "Maya, Claire." Claire's voice held the guilt that had shadowed her face earlier. "Do you want me to come?" "Claire." Maya nodded. The three of them rode the elevator together in metal silence. On the floor the lights were dimmed and most desks were cleared. Maya's cubicle looked smaller than it had that morning. Her chair had been pushed in. Her tote sat in the cubicle chair where she'd left it. She reached in and felt the locket's chain. Relief washed past her sternum. Then she saw a paper on the desk that had not belonged there. A printed spreadsheet with handwritten edits in a pen she did not recognize. Somewhere someone had been inside after she left. The suspicion swelled into alarm. Claire, who had access. Maya and spoke fast. Claire answered, "Security only staff today." Claire's mouth pressed thin. Claire had been in 2 scenes now, and each time her choices rippled outward. Maya felt the floor's quietness as a pressure. She led them to the conference room where the panels of glass made a cage of reflections. "I want to check my files, Maya." Inside the conference room, she opened her tote and emptied it on the table. The locket lay there with the watch and the pens. Maya ran a finger along the locket's edge and felt a bite of cold metal. She found a paper folded small and tucked under the locket. It was new. The paper bore a sentence in neat handwriting. "I believe in what you can build. Call if you want help. E. Reed." The ink had a slight smudge. Her stomach dropped. The paper confirmed Ethan's earlier words and the phone message. It also told her someone had placed the note in her bag after their first conversation, not before. The external event hit like a door closing. Maya pushed back her chair slowly and confronted Ethan. "Did you put this in my bag?" she asked. Claire stepped to the doorway and watched. Ethan's face changed in a way she had not seen until that moment. His jaw tightened, then smoothed. "I left it on your chair," he said. "When you left the building, I tucked it where you would find it." His words aimed to sound unthreatening. Maya's voice rose. "You put your hand in my bag without asking," she said. The room tightened. Claire interrupted, and the conversation sped into a quick exchange. "Maya, calm down." "Claire, I didn't see him do that." "Claire, did you see anyone else?" "Maya, no," Claire answered. "Jonas was the one who escorted her," Claire added. The dialogue turned rapid for a moment, 3 to 6 quick lines. Maya demanded a name. Claire offered none. Ethan repeated he meant to help. Maya called him out on privacy. The rapid back and forth made the scene a pressure valve for all the built-up suspicion. Security arrived after a staff member below reported a disturbance in the lobby. A guard's shadow filled the doorway. Jonas reappeared on the floor with his tie slightly loosened and his expression guarded. "What's happening here?" Ethan answered. "I accompanied Memes." Clark to help her collect an item. Jonas looked at the scattered papers and then at Claire. The exchange made the misunderstanding official. The guard asked Ethan to identify himself. Ethan offered his card. Claire's face tightened into a question of loyalty. The tension in the room became a clamp. Maya stood with her box under one arm and the folded note in the other. "Jonas, someone has been in my desk since I left. There are edits I never made." Jonas frowned and checked the desk. He called the building's facilities number and then said, "We will review security footage." The announcement moved everyone into a new orbit. The suspicion shifted into fear. What if the intrusion meant something more than curiosity? Ethan's hands rose slightly in a gesture of surrender. "I understand why you are upset," he said, "but I did not break in. I did not go through your things." His voice was steady. "Maya, then explain the note in my bag," he answered. "I left the note at the chair where you were sitting outside. If it ended up in your tote, I did not put it there intentionally." The conversation fractured into competing possibilities. Claire nothing for a long beat. Then she said, "Maya, do you want me to call someone?" This was another external choice that would alter the next steps. The guard asked Ethan to wait while they checked footage. Instead of waiting calmly, Ethan reached into his coat and left something on the conference table, a small metal object with an engraved logo. He did not announce it. When he walked to the doorway, his pace became a slight hurry. Maya noticed the object more than she did his retreat. It was a membership token for a private business lounge, the sort of item that suggested access and expense. The token did not match the card Ethan had shown earlier. It suggested a life beyond the tidy title on the card. At the doorway, Ethan looked back once. He did not call to her. He walked out under the fluorescent stairway light and vanished down the corridor. The guard moved to watch him leave. Claire turned to Maya and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Do you want me to go after him?" "Claire." Maya held the note and then let it fold between her fingers. The note's ink smudged against her skin. She felt a meanie, cliffhanger tighten in her chest. If she let Ethan go, she lost a line to the only person who had offered help. If she followed him, she risked being seen as an alarmist. The choice tasted like a hinge. They watched the security feed together in the empty conference room. The footage showed Ethan sitting near the plaza steps, then standing as some delivery men hurried past. The camera cut to a blurry moment where a shadow crossed the stairwell. The feed was grainy, but it showed that someone else had been on the floor earlier, a different figure who ducked behind a service door. The revelation changed the angle of suspicion. It meant Ethan might not be the intruder after all, or he might have used a different route. The twist altered the way Maya understood the earlier events. Jonas took the lead then. He called the building manager and then the police non-emergency line. Claire offered to walk with Maya to her apartment. On the elevator ride down, Maya, "Claire, did you ever see Ethan before today?" Claire shook her head, "No." He seemed like someone who knew the building. Maya's chest felt hollow and oddly alert. She realized that she had been carried along by other people's actions all day. Now she needed to make a choice that belonged to her. That night Maya sat under the apartment lamp with the folded note between her fingers. The light fell on the locket as if it wanted to choose sides. She turned the paper over and found a small smudge of ink and a faint fingerprint along the margin. She pressed the fingerprint to her lip as if that might make a decision feel more like a path. Shame had softened into resolve, but not the slogan, like resolve the world expects. It was quieter and practical. She would check the building footage again the next morning. She would call the number on Ethan's card and ask direct questions. She would not hand the choice to someone else. Before closing the apartment door behind Claire, Maya placed the little metal token that Ethan left on her kitchen counter and set the locket on top of the folded note. The token caught the lamp light and flashed a warm brown for a moment. The last image of the chapter is concrete and specific. Maya lays the items on her table, folds the paper under the locket, and hears her phone buzz with an unknown caller. The chapter ends on that single action. The reach for the phone as the screen lights the face of the woman who must decide whether to trust the help that arrived on the plaza steps. Patel slid a stamped rent demand across his desk and said, 7 days, or I start eviction proceedings. Maya's fingers tightened on the strap of her worn leather tote. Shame arrived before she could answer. She pressed her thumb into the leather and let her shoulders fold. The landlord's office smelled of lemon cleaner and old receipts. The problem was simple and urgent. After the layoff on the plaza, she now had a formal notice and no paycheck to meet it. Shame drove her mouth to a thin line. She had left the building earlier with a small cardboard box in her hands while security walked her to the service elevator and her coworkers glanced away. That memory sat under her ribs like a bruise and pushed the next choices into motion. Fear followed, not a poetic fear, but the quick, practical sort that makes the tongue dry and the palms search for numbers. She put her wallet on the desk without opening it. Maya. Patel, tapping the paper with his pen, this is the timeline. 7 days. I can hold the apartment for you. His voice was not loud. It was the precise voice of someone who ran a business and saw late payments as arithmetic. Mr. Patel, please. Maya, I understand. I'm looking at options. Her hands moved. She smoothed her skirt, tucked a wave of dark hair behind an ear, then stopped because she had nothing sensible to say next. He made notes. If you don't pay, I post the notice. It's standard. I am done apologizing for landlords being practical. He set the pen down and watched her the way someone watches the last coins in a jar. Maya left with the notice folded into the pocket of her coat. Outside, the plaza's late morning light looked ordinary, and the ordinary was the enemy now. The first emotion shift came quick. Shame to panic. She checked her phone and found only 2 missed calls, one from her sister she couldn't take, and one from an unknown number that had rung twice. She walked to the corner cafe and slid into a table where Lila usually sat. Lila arrived with a to-go cup and a cautious smile. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and sugar. The small bell above the door chimed when people came and went. Concrete details kept her from dissolving into a single word. Maya, Lila, sitting down and putting both hands on the table. What happened? Lila's voice sounded like someone trying to hold an umbrella over a leak. They served me a 7-day demand. Meh. Patel says he'll start the eviction if I don't pay. Maya set the paper down so Lila could read the bold header. She watched Lila's mouth tighten. Lila's eyes moved over the notice. I am so sorry. She reached for Maya's hand but hesitated. I can cover Tuesday's groceries, not rent. I don't have that kind of money right now. Her words were practical. The second emotion shift, panic turning toward resigned support. It's fine, Maya. And it wasn't fine. Maya drank coffee without tasting it. Lila's support didn't change the math. They spoke in short sentences. Leela whether Maya had applied for unemployment and whether she had checked temp agencies. Maya answered, yes, but she had been told she was overqualified. At the staffing agency that afternoon, a recruiter named Renee slid Maya's resume back toward her with a sympathetic tilt. The office was a narrow room with a wall of cubicles and a television flickering job listings. Renee's tone was brisk. Maya, the openings we have are short, term and lower paid. You'd be taking a step back. Some clients can't afford experienced hires right now. Renee tapped the screen where job titles rotated. We can put you in for administrative temp work. It's part-time to start. Maya felt exposed. Renee, I have management experience. I built product roadmaps. I managed teams. Her voice landed in the small room. I know. Renee's hands came together. I know what you did. Right now the calls are for lower-tier contracts. If you want, we submit you. But I want to promise it pays enough for rent. There were only facts in Renee's face, and facts did not comfort. Maya left the temp office with another small stack of possible roles she did not want but might need. She held them like receipts. The practical steps accumulated. Calls forms a spreadsheet of cash flows that refused to reach a positive number. Each external event pushed the rhythm forward. 3 paragraphs later, something new arrived. Late afternoon, back at the corner cafe, where the light leaned warm through the window, a man sat at the table opposite hers. He had a tailored coat draped over the chair and a leather-bound notebook on the table. He watched her for a long beat before he spoke. That observation pulled the narrative toward the stranger's quiet intervention from the outline. "Excuse me," he said. He did not ask for money. He slid a single white card across the table. "I saw you earlier. I have an idea that might help. If you have time, come by the co-working room across the street in an hour." His voice had a calm baritone. He folded his hands and waited. Maya touched the card. The name on it was Ethan Reed. No title, just a number and an email. Leela peered over and raised an eyebrow. The encounter shifted her suspicion into cautious curiosity, another emotion change. Doubt turning to careful interest. Maya kept her voice steady. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Because I notice work that gets overlooked. Because sometimes the right next move is to put a prototype back in front of people who matter." Ethan folded his hands and did not press, no obligation. Just a conversation, he smiled, and the small dimple softened his reserve. Leela whispered, "Maya, be careful." She it like someone reading the weather. Maya nodded and set the card into her tote. The card felt thin and oddly solid. At the co-working space an hour later, the room was small and glass-walled, with a long table and a whiteboard streaked from previous meetings. 2 colleagues sat at the end with coffees, watching quietly as Ethan led Maya into a corner. The space smelled faintly of marker and lemon polish. Ethan opened a laptop and pulled a file up without fanfare. "Do you remember the presentation you gave at the North Demo last year?" "Ethan," Maya blinked. Her throat closed for a half-second. "That prototype. I thought the files were gone when Jonas closed the server." She the old colleague's name like a bruise. Ethan's hand lifted. "I kept a copy. I watched your demo recording. You had a solution people commented on but funding froze. I preserved the prototype on a private key. You weren't given credit the way you should have been." His words disclosed a small reveal that reframed a past slight into a concrete advantage. She felt something shift inside, from helpless to considered possibility. Her jaw went tight. She made a small laugh that had no humor. "Why would you keep it?" "Maya, because I invest in projects, not resumes. Because I believe potential can be rescued with the right support." Ethan closed the laptop. He chewed the end of a pen cap for a beat, and then handed her a printed wireframe with annotations in neat handwriting. 2 small panel members, colleagues Ethan introduced as advisors, came in and scanned the document. They pointed questions about deliverables and timelines. The room tightened into negotiation. Maya answered in crisp, concrete terms. She described tasks she could complete, deadlines she could meet, and the equity she would be willing to trade for immediate backing. When Ethan proposed a short-term project as proof of commitment, the energy shifted again. Doubt returned, but layered with anger. Maya bristled at the implication she owed anyone, so this is charity, she said, and the sentence snapped. Ethan lifted his face. It's investment, not charity. If you're willing to take this on and put in the work, I'll provide the resources to hit the milestones. You keep creative control for the first phase. His voice was steady. You say you believe in potential. Maya, then trust me without conditional strings. She tapped the edge of the paper. The argument sharpened into negotiation. Ethan's hand paused. Maya, trust and risk are not the same. I can front the costs, but I need a short agreement to protect the infrastructure. He slid a printed contract across the table. The contract's edges caught the light. The late night co-working office would become the stage for the chapter's peak. They argued the terms in short exchanges, 3-4 lines at a time, each sentence doing work, Ethan, equity. You can cap it for phase 1. What about my voice on product direction? You lead the product work, the back and forth met the requirement for negotiated rapid dialogue. Each line used names so the listener could follow. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to their debate. Inside, the stakes altered. Eviction deadline versus professional pride. The minutes piled like receipts. The third emotion shift moved Maya from anger into pragmatic acceptance. Her hands trembled as she picked up the pen. I want to sign blindly. May I need 2 weeks to show real traction. I want weekly check-ins. I keep editorial control on product decisions for 60 days. She pushed the paper back. Ethan read through and nodded. Fair. I can grant that. We put milestones in writing. He tapped a line and offered his pen. The conversation tightened with every clause. There was negotiation and there was a power shift. Where earlier she'd been on the defensive, now she made terms. The contractor's signing was the chapter's climax. Maya hesitated. Her thumb found the worn leather tote at her feet and squeezed. She thought of the cardboard box Jonas had made her carry and of the moment security walked her to the service elevator. That earlier dismissal fed the small, bright decision she made now. Sign here, Ethan. She wrote her name, slow and purposeful, as if the letters could glue back what had been taken. The pen left a mark that she would remember holding on to. When she lifted the pen, the room had a different weight. The panel members exchanged low words. Ethan folded the contract and slid it into his leather notebook. We'll start Monday with a list of deliverables. Ethan, you have 3 weeks to meet the first milestone. If you don't, I stop the support. He did not sugarcoat the conditions. They both accepted a risk. Maya felt resolve settling into the places that had wobbled. It wasn't a slogan. It was a schedule, a set of tasks, and a small insurance that her work could be recognized. She packed the annotated wireframe into her tote and glanced at the glass wall. Night had fallen outside. The office lights reflected on the sidewalk. She stopped at the sidewalk to breathe. Her hands were steady now, but her breath came short. She pulled out her phone and tried to call her sister. It went to voicemail. It was then Leela called. Maya. Leela's voice was thin. They filed the notice this morning. The landlord told me he already sent it to the county. He had to. Leela's words landed like a new piece of math. Another external event intruded. What? Maya, he filed today. 7 days starts now, not later. Leela's breath hitched. I am so sorry. She did not offer money. She offered information. Maya's feet felt cold against warm concrete. She pressed the phone to her ear and listened to Leela's as short sentences. The chapter tightened. The mini cliffhanger landed. Signing the contract had not erased the legal timeline. It had bought operational support, but not time. Maya closed her phone and looked at the printed milestones in her tote. The first set of tasks would either meet a business need or collapse under pressure. Ethan had given her resources, but not time. Her choice became immediate. Accelerate the work to meet the landlord's timeline or find a way to stall the legal notice. That choice demanded action, not reflection. She dialed Ethan. He answered on the second ring. Ethan, The landlord filed today. She did not ask permission. She stated the problem, then we move up the timeline. Send me your priorities now. Meet me at the working tomorrow at 9. We'll outline the first deliverable sprint. His voice was concise. Okay, Maya's reply was short. She hung up, tightened the strap on her tote, and walked toward the bus stop where the night buses climbed the avenue. Her movements held the new rhythm. Work lists, obligations, and a shrinking clock. The chapter closes on a concrete beat. Maya sits at the bus stop with the printed wireframes on her lap. Her phone buzzes with a calendar invite from Ethan labeled Sprint Planning. Leela's last words echo through a line of practical talk. He filed today. The eviction deadline remains real and near. Maya taps the screen and opens her notes. She writes the first task with a steady hand. Build a minimum viable demo for Monday. Then she pulls her coat tighter against the night and rises to catch the next bus, walking into the next chapter with a plan and a legal clock ticking above it. Maya yanked the office door and stopped when the desk lamp threw a rectangle of light across the empty workstation. A manila folder sat where her laptop had been, her name written in black ink on the tab. Suspicion tightened her chest and made her fingers slacken on the tote strap. She had come for one last bag and a dozen small things: a worn leather tote, a simple gold locket, a thin silver watch. Now the folder held her attention like a pulse under the skin. She reached for it with the kind of careful movement someone uses to touch a sleeping animal. She opened the folder in the lamp's pool. 30 pages photocopied documents, a ledger page bookmarked with a paperclip, and a single Polaroid tucked inside. The elevator hummed far away. The first sheet listed transactions tied to companies she had seen on Ethan Reed's portfolio slide at their CAF meeting. Suspicion shifted into a harder, more particular doubt. Who had left this here for her, and why now? Maya slid the Polaroid free. It showed a narrow conference room and a hand passing a stamped contract across a table. A name on the contract matched an address she'd driven past each week since the layoff. She tucked the papers into her tote, but did not put the folder away. On the walk to the service elevator, she kept her shoulders low and her feet flat, counting the steps to keep from leaving fingerprints where they might matter. The security desk buzzed when she passed. Carlos glanced up, eyes skimming her box. "You're late," he said. His tone held the sort of guarded pause people use before a warning. "I just came for a bag, Maya." She kept her voice steady. Her mouth tasted like coffee and the metal of elevator buttons. Carlos watched the tote, watched the folder edge. You shouldn't leave with anything that looks like company property. People watch things like that now. He did not name the people. He tapped the metal counter as if counting the seconds until something happened. Maya felt a shift. Doubt went to fear as she realized a new audience might be following the loose thread of her life. She stepped into the elevator and the doors closed with a quiet finality. For a second, she considered going back to her apartment, folding the ledger into a drawer and pretending none of it existed. She remembered the cardboard box from the plaza, the thin shame when Jonas watched her pack a single coffee mug and a plant clipping. She remembered Mia. Pattle's rent note, the 6 words stamped with a date that had sounded like a verdict. Those memories did not arrive as fog. They arrived as exact hard pictures. Jonas' flat tone, the scent of lemon oil in the landlord's office. They pushed her forward. At the caf the next morning, sunlight warmed the tabletop where Ethan had insisted they meet. He arrived 4 minutes early, coat collar turned up against an autumn wind, notebook under his arm. He folded his hands when she sat and watched her the way someone watches a line on a map and tries to see where it leads. Maya slid the photocopies onto the table without looking at him. "Ethan?" she said. The name was a question. He did not take the folder. He put his hand flat on the wood near her papers, but not on them. "I left you something last night, because I thought you should see it in person." He said, "I wanted you to know I'm serious about helping." His baritone was calm, controlled. Maya's suspicion trembled into skepticism. Who left the folder? She asked. Ethan's thumb tapped the edge of his notebook. That wasn't to me. I wanted you to come in and talk first. I done to leave things. He stopped, recalibrating, not without talking. Who left it matters less than what's inside. He kept his voice even. Maya heard the word less and felt it hit like a small stone in a pond. She pushed the Polaroid toward him. He studied the photograph. His face shifted, not into shock but into calculation. I recognize that table, he said. I can explain each company on that ledger. I can introduce you to counsel, to people who will reopen conversations on your work. He leaned forward. Maya, I can make this stop being a trap and turn it into a platform. But you should know what accepting my help looks like. His words tightened around a conditional promise. Maya let her jaw unclench. Doubt became anger in the small bite between her teeth. So now there's a cost, she asked. Ethan did not raise his voice. There are always expectations when someone puts money and reputation behind a person. I want to hide that. I want results, and I want to protect the people who work with me. He folded his hands. The same gesture he'd used when he had first offered her a card weeks earlier. I will not own you, Maya. But I will ask for accountability. If that matters, we can work out terms. His language was careful. It read as negotiation instead of compassion. Nora slid into the seat opposite Maya, dropping an envelope on the table with a soft slap. You need to see this. Nora, not looking up. She had been a colleague at the firm, the same woman who had whispered about layoffs and left early that day the plaza emptied. Her voice had edges now. Maya's hand closed around the paper. Nora, did you bring this? She asked. I did, and I saw Ethan earlier at a board event. I followed his name through filings. Nora's senses came quick-clipped. She pushed the photocopies across. These are not favors. They are scripts. Look at the dates, Maya. He invests. Then agreements appear with clauses that put people under long-term controls. Suspicion sharpened into a clearer accusation. Ethan stood slowly. Nora, that's misleading. Those are standard protective measures for investors. You could misread legal protective language as control. That doesn't mean they being used to trap people. His words were a shield. Nora named a file and a date. This complaint was sealed 5 years ago. But the ledger references payments to people who then signed versions of contracts that limited their options. She pushed a photocopy across the table with her thumb. I am not saying all investors are bad, Maya. I am saying you need to know who you are working with before you hand someone your career. Her tone held both warning and solidarity. Maya felt the conversation crease into a harder question. Was Ethan a rescuing force or a new gatekeeper? The emotion shifted again, skepticism to a rising resolve to test him. She closed her hand into a fist under the table and let the resolve sit heavy in her palm. Ethan, show me the documents. Show me the contracts you use. Show me the language you want me to sign, Maya. Her voice was flat but measured. He hesitated, then nodded. I will. But I need you to hear my intention first. I have supported people before. I pay for mentorship and then open doors. I done T-berry people. I expect commitment. He put his notebook on the table and slid a business card toward her. Come by the partner building tomorrow afternoon. Bring a list of questions. He did not answer Nora directly. After they left, Nora walked with Maya for 2 blocks, eyes on the pavement. I dug because I couldn't not dig. Nora, if you accept help, read every clause. And don't sign anything on the spot. Nora's cadence was brisk, practical. The 2 women had worked late nights on overlapping projects. Nora's caution came from seeing colleagues sign away choices in the name of security. Maya went home and set the photocopies on her kitchen table where the locket and tote waited. She touched the gold locket, a small warm circle against her forefinger, and the action steadied her. That night, she read the ledger again and checked the names against public records. Patterns emerged. Investment, followed by agreements, followed by settlements. A twist surfaced on the 3rd pass through a ledger page, an address repeated that linked back to a property, where Ethan had once organized a community mentorship dinner. The pattern did not prove guilt, but it changed the shape of the questions. 3 days later, she stood in the glass-walled boardroom under a different lamp. Ethan's partner building, sunlight sliding across polished surfaces. Ethan closed the door and gestured toward 2 chairs. He wore a tailored coat and a crease in his shirt that matched a businessman's habit. He folded his hands and watched her when she sat. "I brought the contracts, Ethan." He opened a leather folder and laid copies on the table. He pointed to clauses that spoke of performance expectations and equity sharing. He explained the language with the steady cadence she'd heard before. He used words like partner and stakeholder and alignment. Maya read. He answered some questions cleanly. He deflected others. At one point she asked, "What happens if I want a role outside your network?" Ethan closed his eyes for a beat. "You can propose it. We negotiate. I help until there is a sustainable platform to stand on." His tone held a bargain. "I want to stop you from leaving. But I'll want to ensure anything I invested in isn't used against others I've helped." He tapped the edge of his watch. "Protection is not control. Maya." The words sounded rehearsed. Nora's photocopies returned to haunt the conversation. Maya pushed one across the glass. "Nora says there's more to this ledger. She says people end up tied down." She kept her sentence short. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Nora has a perspective. I respect her right to be cautious. But her theory doesn't match how I operate." He rose and walked to the window, looking out at the city. He did not ask her to trust him. He had to trust the paperwork and his explanation. The shift came when a woman in a business coat stepped into the corridor and stopped outside the glass. She carried a legal printout and a guarded expression. Her name was Claire Reyes. Ethan's face registered a quick, private recognition. Claire had worked briefly with Ethan years ago, and then filed a sealed complaint about influence and unfair terms. She did not smile when she said, "Ethan, this was sealed for a reason, but the ledger you are connected to as lines I done like." Her voice was even. But she put the printout on the table in front of Ethan. "I kept a copy because I believed it might matter someday." Ethan went still. The guardedness that had been beneath his polished manner rose to the surface. He took the printout with 2 fingers and scanned it as if weighing every sentence. "Claire," he said slowly, "this complaint was closed and dismissed." "It doesn't apply now." Claire shook her head. "Dismissed in court isn't the same as dismissed in consequence. There are settlements and language that show pressure points. People sign because they fear losing everything. That pattern shows influence, Ethan." She met his eyes. "I am not here to make accusations without proof. I am here because Maya needs to see the paper. She needs the ledger to be clear in public record before anyone asks her to surrender options." Her tone was unyielding in a way that shifted the room. The conversation changed shape. Ethan went from a mentor explaining terms to a man defending his past. Maya felt the emotion inside her pivot, from suspicion to guarded scrutiny. She looked from Ethan to Claire to Nora and realized how many hands had shaped the ledger's meaning. Each person named in the documents had a face and a timing. The ledger was not a story but a machine with parts someone had assembled. When Ethan rose to block the boardroom door and stepped toward the hallway, his movement tightened the air. "Maya," he said, "I don't want you to feel forced." The sentence came out in a single clause that could be read as both assurance and pressure. He put a hand on the doorframe. She stood too. "Ethan, your hand is on the door. You are asking me to sign a path that limits my choices." Her voice did not break. He moved closer, lowering his tone. "I only ask you to accept help that will make your work visible. I have built doors others couldn't. I can make companies call your name again." He held her gaze. Nora stepped forward. "You can block someone's exit, Ethan. That's not protection." Her sentence was a slap of law. Claire folded the printouts and set them on the table. Ethan looked at the ledger in Maya's tote, then at the exit. "If you choose to expose this publicly, you will need clear counsel and protection. Going to the press without a plan could ruin everyone involved, including you. He leaned on a paper, thin line of concern. Maya felt the shape of the moment. Fear flashed, of being silenced, of being framed, of losing the last clean thing left to her, her reputation. The fear fed a clarity. She moved toward the door, and then toward the file cabinet at the far end of the boardroom. "I am not your project, Ethan," she said. Voice narrow. "I'm a person with a job to rebuild. If you re-suggesting I owe you because you help, then you are asking me to trade my options for your convenience." She took the ledger from her bag and placed it on the table. Ethan's hand swept out as if to stop her, fingers passing the papers, not quite catching them. "Maya," her chest tightened. The boardroom door clicked shut behind her in a way that felt meant to contain her. He put himself between her and the hall. "You sound like you want independence, but independence without funding is a slower route. I can accelerate your return." His cadence stayed even, but his posture hardened. That moment became a squeeze. Maya's breath hit the back of her throat. She stepped back, then lunged for the hall and grabbed the handle. Ethan reached it first and put his palm against the wood. "You can T-block me," she said. "You can T-decide for me." Her voice lost its edge and went thin with anger. There were 4 rapid exchanges of words between them like staccato knife cuts. "Maya, listen," Ethan began. "No, Ethan, you can T, I will help. I don't need a favor that costs me my future." Each line landed short, raw and fast. The rapid dialogue pushed the scene into its climax, a confrontation where stakes were no longer hypothetical. Ethan moved to close the door and hold it. "If you leave now, you will walk out with a handful of papers and nothing else. I can make sure those papers mean something for you." His voice contained a bargain. Its terms hung like a physical object between them. Maya's hand pressed the metal handle with knuckles white. She looked at Nora, then at Claire. Claire lifted a small sealed envelope and placed it on the table, the sealed complaint printout in duplicate. The effect was precise. The presence of law and witness shifted power away from Ethan's personal hold. Ethan's expression flickered with the first real worry she'd seen. He slid back from the door, his hand dropping. "You would go to the police with this," he said. Maya's eyes sharpened. "I will give it to counsel and to the authorities if that ledger shows patterns of coercion. I will not sign an agreement that binds my work without independent review." She pulled the ledger close, the paperweight a physical comfort. The climax reached its apex when Ethan tried to reach across the table to take the ledger, and Claire stepped between them and placed her palm flat on the pages. Carlos' voice came from the hall like a drumbeat. "There's an officer at the front desk asking for you, Ms. Clark." The word officer became a pivot. Maya moved first. She slipped the ledger into her tote and pivoted toward the exit. Ethan stepped in front again, but the corridor filled with footsteps and voices. A small group of people had gathered outside, including Nora and Claire. Carlos opened the door wide and Elaine Park, a legal aid volunteer who had worked with Claire, came in with an officer behind her. "Ms. Clark, Elaine, closing the gap. We can help you file this, and we can protect your testimony." Her voice was practical and direct. Ethan's face drained. He stared at the officer and at the printed complaint in Claire's hand. For the first time, the polished surface of his confidence had unresolved seams. He looked at Maya as if someone had changed the rules of a game he had thought he controlled. Maya felt fingers unclench in her shoulders. The emotion shifted again, from fear to action. She handed the tote to Elaine, and the ledger slid into Elaine's hands like an offering. "This is mine to tell, Maya. I want it on record." She met Ethan's eyes once more. "I will not trade my choices for visibility. If your help means I have to sign that away, I will find another way." The sentence set a boundary rather than begging for one. Ethan did not speak right away. He folded his hands and watched as officers took photographs of the ledger and Claire handed over the sealed complaint copy. Nora reached across and squeezed Maya's wrist briefly, a small anchor. Carlos nodded at the officer, then stood back. The pieces of proof moved into motion under the fluorescent light. The city outside kept circulating. Outside the glass tower, cameras of a different kind, phone lenses, an officer's notebook, recorded the exchange as people streamed onto the street. Reporters did not appear, but the ledger was now in custody, and Maya had made a choice that would make the story public through legal channels rather than rumor. She was not choosing ease, she was choosing control. The night closed down with an evidence bag sealed and a witness statement taken by an officer who wrote no promises, only facts. Maya watched them write, finger running the edge of the locket at her throat like a small, private counting of the moments. Claire and Nora walked with her to the street. They did not speak much, but their presence made the sidewalk feel less like an exposed space and more like a place where decisions could be supported. At the police station, Maya signed a statement. She read the ledger pages aloud when the officer asked her to identify them. Each sentence she spoke about dates and names became a piece of public record. The final paragraph she signed was not a speech. It was a set of facts with her signature beneath it. She left the station with a copy in her bag and a plan from Elaine for legal counsel and media strategy. 2 weeks later, local counsel filed a request to unseal parts of the complaint and to subpoena the ledger's related documents. The filing did not instantly topple anyone. It started processes. In the evenings, Maya made lists. Calls to return, a proposal to finish, emails to send to potential collaborators who were not part of Ethan's network. She sat in the cafe where she and Nora had first talked and wrote a pitch that did not include the words, "I was helped," but instead listed deliverables and contacts. Ethan reached out once, carefully. "Maya, I want to help reconcile this without public damage." He wrote, "If you need assistance with introductions, I can provide them." The message was a test. Maya replied with a short line that named a limit. "I want independence. If you can help without asking for exclusivity, we can speak. Otherwise, I will build myself with counsel and my own people." The sentence was a clear refusal of the earlier bargain. Claire organized a meeting between Maya and a small group of women, former mentees who had navigated similar offers. They sat in a legal aid office over paper cups of weak coffee and traded stories of clauses, side letters, and the quiet pressure to say yes. They gave Maya names of lawyers and a list of questions to ask. Nora helped Maya rework her portfolio and emailed 3 contacts with direct industry language. Carlos checked in more than once with quiet updates from the building's staff about who had been in and out of the office during the days the ledger listed payments. Months passed in a stack of small actions. Maya filed a robust proposal for a role at a mid-sized non-profit and presented it to a board that sought her specific skill set. She sat at the front of a room and spoke in short sentences about what she would deliver. People questions, some skeptical, some eager. She answered each one with a document or a reference instead of a plea. When she left, she felt something like measured confidence. A settlement meeting eventually occurred in a conference room with counsel present and cameras turned away. Ethan offered a public acknowledgement of a mistake in his communication and an agreement to modify any standard contracts that could be read as coercive. Claire's sealed complaint was partially unsealed, enough to show a pattern that prompted institutional review. The ledger entries were subpoenaed and some payments explained as part of legitimate mentorship stipends. Others remained suspicious and invited further scrutiny. The results were not absolute vindications or condemnations. They were a set of facts placed where law and public oversight could address them. When the final paperwork arrived, Maya sat at her kitchen table with the locket beside her hand. She signed an agreement to join the non-profit as a consultant on a pilot project, not as an employee under a controlling clause. She did not accept a single participant's offer to make her the face of a campaign in exchange for relinquishing review rights. She negotiated terms in small, exact sentences and kept copies of every page. Ethan sent an email that read, "I respect your choices." It had fewer lines than his first offer. Maya did not reply at once. She thought of the nights in the empty office lamp, of Carlos's quick warning, of Nora's envelope, of Claire's sealed complaint, and of the ledger that had forced the question into daylight. She folded the email away and walked to the cafe, where she would meet Nora for coffee. Outside the cafe, the city light had a soft golden color that matched the edges of the locket when she held it. She pushed open the door and saw Nora waiting, a to-go cup steaming in her hand. "How do you feel, Nora?" Maya smiled in a small, private way. "Tired," she said, also clearer. The words were practical, not poetic. She slid into the chair and set the tote on the seat beside her. The locket tapped her knuckle. They did not speak about future fame. They spoke about contracts and lawyers and lists of names to call. They made small plans. Maya would present the pilot in 8 weeks and Nora would help with the slide deck. Claire would review press statements. Carlos would keep an eye on the building and send a note if anything else appeared. The list was a map of actions. When she left the cafe, Maya paused at the curb and looked at the glass tower where the ledger had begun its public life. A police car sat 2 blocks away, its light off. A courier wheeled a cart past a bank entrance. People moved through the city, each with small decisions shaping the arc of their day. She put her hand in her tote, felt the folded copies of the public filings, and then closed the zipper. At the foot of the tower, a reporter called her name. She did not stop. She kept walking until the crosswalk changed and the light told her to go. She walked with a list in her mind and a set of people who had refused to let her story be simplified. The last line of the chapter is not a proclamation. It is an action. Maya handed the ledger to the officer and walked back toward the lit cafe, the ledger sealed in evidence and a decision already in motion.